You just heard the air quality problem at Neil Armstrong. There are 3 classrooms that were closed because of mold in the Mid-Valley Elementary School. Mold. So I decided that I would call an expert on the subject on the cleanup and the treatment of mold problems, and that is Chris Griffing. Chris operates ServiceMaster by Griffing in several counties in our area, and he's on the phone with us right now. So we're making you the mold expert. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing good. How are you, Frank?
Can you give me an idea, like all of a sudden, I haven't seen this in the past, but why are we seeing so many mold problems this year?
Well, I think as everybody knows that lives here, the weather conditions are a little out of the ordinary. We've seen 25 out of 30 days where we've had rain. We've had high humidity. We've had it followed up with high temperatures, and pretty much all of those things are going to create ideal conditions for mold everywhere, indoors, outdoors, and the like.
Well, now, the reason that I wanted to call you is because I'm seeing all this stuff about schools, and I'm thinking, well, if the mold is a problem in schools, it may also be a problem in homes and businesses. Are you seeing any of that, and how do people even recognize a mold problem?
Well, I think you can certainly recognize it by just the obvious stuff. I mean, if it doesn't smell right, I think most of us know what mold smells like. That doesn't mean you have a problem. It means you may just have a beginning of a problem. I don't want to blow things out of proportion. Little problems are little problems, but little problems lead to big problems if you don't do something about them. I think with all the schools, Frank, some of the issues they're not real active buildings in the summer. And I think when you get high humidities and you have still air, no activity, no air exchange, and no central air, that combination of things can lead to a whole series of problems regarding moisture, which is really what triggers so much mold growth this season.
Now, I called you because I know that you have dealt with some big mold cases on an industrial level. What are the health dangers of mold?
Well, they range from everything from, minor irritations similar to allergies. Of course, the more allergic you are, the more severe your reaction. So all the things you'd expect from something that you may be allergic to. I mean, long-term chronic exposure, creates other more severe respiratory problems.
So now, we have done programs here where we have had serious flooding because of the heavy rains. People who have had very heavy flooding problems in their basement, does it naturally mean that they're going to have mold problems, or just some of them?
Whenever you have water intrusion, you need to either dry it out and/or usually with all the flooding we've had, which has been pretty severe, you really need to get that wet sheetrock, wet carpeting, wet materials out right away. And in the cases where that's not possible, with these high temperatures and chronic rain and chronic humidity and chronic heat, a lot of people do get moldy, and it's almost inevitable. It's the natural process. It's the way nature works. You give it some good food source, and you give it some good conditions to grow, and it grows.
Now, one of the reasons I'm concerned is because I remember as a reporter on Newswatch 16, we did stories about entire houses that had to be, just demolished because the mold just took over. So what would you say are some things, some warning signs that people would see that would mean that they have to call the mold expert to deal with this, or at least find out if they have a problem?
It's usually going to be those things that we just talked about. If you're having allergic reactions, itchy eyes, runny nose that you can't seem to get rid of, that you haven't had before and you notice when you're at home, because obviously we spend 8 hours a day in bed, for example. So while we're sleeping, we're breathing the air in our house. And obviously, if you see any visible signs, dark circles, green, a lot of times it's fuzzy. It takes a lot of different looks. But mostly you want to pay attention for the smell. The smell is the early detection system. And probably for everybody in Northeast PA that has a basement, which is most of us, you really, really more than ever need a dehumidifier this year. Unless you have central air, and central air will often control the humidity as well. But you really need a dehumidifier or some sort of way to control the humidity inside.
Okay, now let's say your team gets called. How do you treat the mold? What do you do?
Well, it depends on its severity. It could be something as simple as just a little bit of general cleaning and a little bit of dehumidification. Or it could be something as severe as what you've talked about, where you're doing some major demolition to get rid of the materials that are infected if it's severe. So it could be anywhere from a very minor problem to something that's really serious, and we need to get on it and try to be saving the house.
Now, one of the reasons
we see both.
One of the reasons I called you is because we have had flooding, not just in northeastern Pennsylvania, but also in the Lehigh Valley, and you cover a pretty wide footprint. What is your coverage area?
We have 2 offices here in Pennsylvania, one in Bethlehem, and we also have one in Dalton. And we're also licensed to operate in Florida, and we're licensed mold remediators in that state as well. And occasionally we travel for large losses during hurricanes or different significant events.
Okay, last question. How do people get in touch with you if they need information?
You can Google ServiceMaster by Griffing. You can, of course, call us direct, 800-253-7366. And we're pretty ready available with an online presence.
All right. Well, thanks for the information. I appreciate it, and hope that anybody that has problems has the sense to give you a call. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, Frank.
My pleasure. Chris Griffing. You just heard the air quality